Welcome to the Thriving Tides podcast. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Julianne. If you're an entrepreneur or busy individual looking for self-care ideas, you're in the right place.
And we can't wait to share our experiences with you. Sara Roach-Lewis teaches ambitious women the strategies they need to claim their confidence, scale their businesses, and double their revenues. With decades of experience as a feminist business strategist, Sara has supported thousands of women to shed society's expectations and create new pathways for success. As CEO of SRL Solutions and creator of the Seven-Figure Confidence Program, Sara is on a mission to help ambitious women build scalable businesses that support their busy lives. Through her first book, She Rules: What You Didn't Know Is Holding You Back in Business, Sara shares her strategies for exponential business growth, achieving laser focus while moving through resistance, rebranding self-care as an important business practice, and how to turn your imposter syndrome into seven-figure confidence. A lifelong learner, Sara holds a degree in psychology from Mount Allison University. She's a certified coach and holds diplomas in business administration and journalism, and in alternative dispute resolutions, mediation, and conflict resolution from the University of Prince Edward Island. We really hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome, Sara!
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We are pumped. We have Sara Roach-Lewis here today. I am holding up her book for those of us who are, or those of you who are watching us on YouTube. Sara is a published author, among so many other things that we just mentioned in the intro as well. But we got to attend your book launch last night, which was really cool. So this is so timely for us to get you in here, talk about the inspiration of your book, all the things that you do. Man, I feel like this is going to be a good one.
So can we keep it under an hour?
I know. Buckle up, folks. Buckle up.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. Love it. And you're such a natural speaker. So I feel like we're just going to sit back and listen to you lots, but we've got a few questions to throw your way. And maybe we'll start with, tell us a little bit about your journey, because it's been a very interesting one. I'm just going to stop it there and let you.
Sure. Well, my journey to entrepreneurship was really long and winding. I did not start my business until 4 years ago when I was 45. Yeah. So I spent most of my career working in the not-for-profit sector. And, it's a funny thing to go from the not-for-profit sector to making, to a business.
Yes.
Right. It was a bit of a winding path to get there. But I'm really happy I found my way here.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah, you don't think about that sometimes, too, about going from not-for-profit to profit. Mm-hmm. So I love that.
Such a switch in the mindset, right?
Yeah.
Because you were so good at finding money through like writing grants, and there's such a traditional path of how to do that. And then you switch it to, oh, wait a second, I'm selling me. Because in the type of business that you're in as well, it's you are your asset, which you talk a lot about that in your book too, like why it's so important to take care of yourself because of that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it was it took a while to figure that out and to figure out some of those things. I used to say I could write a proposal for $300,000. Absolutely. I mean, not without agony, but I could do it. But I couldn't ask you for $20 for like the kids' raffle ticket. Mm-hmm. So there was definitely some skills that I needed to hone when I started.
Yeah,
that's totally fair. And how did you develop those skills? Like, did you go to a lot of workshops or just kind of surround yourself with fellow entrepreneurs? Like, how did you make that step to finally be the boss that you are today?
Well, a couple of things. I took, I love to learn, and I really fell in love with the 90-day year framework. So I've really sort of adapted that to be my own. But in the beginning, in 2018, I invested in myself, and I really, before I spent a dime, or before I earned a dime, I spent almost $10,000 on a coaching certification program, and all of the travel that was involved in that, because it was based out of New York. And it was really terrific because I got to learn so much, and it was also deeply terrifying
Yeah.
because I didn't know I didn't know anything about business. And the biggest challenge for me was the sales piece. And there's a few components to that. So part of it was actually a sale. Like when I realized that there's a sales process, and one of the women who was in that initial certification program taught people how to sell. So she was a lovely human who gave me this course for free.
Amazing.
And I learned, once I figured out there was a process, that made me feel much better because I like process. Okay, there's just steps. Like you just have to follow the steps.
Follow the steps.
And so that was a piece of it, was actually learning that. And then the other piece was like figuring out your value. So part of it was, why would anyone pay me for anything?
Yeah.
And so it took some time, especially in that not-for-profit to profit. Now, what I realized is, running a not-for-profit that the revenues moved from, say, $250 a year to $900,000 the last year I was there. That is a huge growth. And there are huge changes that happen with that growth, and I managed all of that. So starting to recognize those things that were common, but those were probably the two key things, was like learning, and then all the mindset work and all the confidence building to recognize that I did have value, and that it wasn't about me taking your money. It was about me providing you value.
Right.
And that was a bit of a shift.
That's a big shift.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a hard one. Value.
Yes.
Oof, that word kind of scares me even just thinking.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
Is that something that you continue to come back to as you level up your business time and again? Like you hear that new levels, new devils, right? Is this the
100%.
same work that you keep coming to, or have you kind of like added to your toolkit as you've gone along the way?
Yeah, so totally continue to add to the toolkit. And one of the things that I did with that, and actually that was an early one, is there's this whole concept around an alter ego. And so the idea being that, you take on a persona. So, Beyonce in her early years had Sasha Fierce. And so it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
She needed that persona to go on stage.
Yeah.
And my Uncle Sandy, my dad's brother, he used to sell electronics. And so in his career, he sold $750 million worth of electronics. He bought for Walmart for like the last decade of his career.
Okay.
So if you bought anything from Walmart that was an electronic, my Uncle Sandy got that for you.
Cool.
Sandy.
Yeah. Thank you, Uncle Sandy. So I created an alter ego called Sandy. And so Sandy sauntered into those early sales calls. And after he retired, he used to go, and he probably still does, maybe we don't have yard sales anymore. Anyway, he used to go to yard sales and buy old watches. And he would fix up watches. And he gave me a finger watch.
Okay.
And so on my sales calls, I would put on the finger watch, and that would help me adopt that persona of Sandy. And so I would go in with this confidence. And then, if it didn't work, well, then it wasn't cutting me to my core. And I felt like, I was not going to be able to recover from that.
Yeah.
That was Sandy. And I just took the totem off and went on with my day. And it really did help. So I don't do that anymore. But that was a really helpful strategy in those early stages of sales. I was terrified of sales in the beginning.
Yeah.
And now it's interesting when you say new levels, new devils. They're just different things now, and they're more sneaky.
They're like, oh, this one's smart. How do we come and get her?
Right? Yeah.
Those gremlins, they're tricky.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's amazing.
I love the alter ego thought. And it sounds like that was, what I talk about in my coaching is, people come to you wanting confidence, but sometimes it's really the courage that you need first, because the confidence you build over time. So I was thinking about that as you were talking, is like that putting that ring on was the courage.
Absolutely.
And you take the steps, and then you realize all of a sudden, no, wait, Sarah's got this. It's totally fine. Yeah. So that's magical. I love that.
Get an alter ego.
There's a book.
You have one.
but Jessica's a bad alter ego.
Jessica's a bad alter ego. You're right. We need the ones that help us.
Yeah.
I love it. What would you say? So, like, sales obviously was a big hurdle in the beginning. What else would be some of those challenges as you stepped into entrepreneurship, having never dreamt this would be the path that you would take?
Well, certainly I characterize my first year in business as a year-long crisis of confidence. I really, for all of those reasons that we just talked about, I really struggled. I also really struggled with, the not-for-profit for profit, sales value, and also how do I maintain my strong feminist principles? How do I maintain my commitment to social justice and, really firmly live in a world of capitalism? And so there was a lot of things that I struggled with, particularly in that first year. And, I had a funny moment. So I started my business in September of 2017, and Christmas 2018, I was listening to this book by Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm sure he's a lovely person, but he just did not resonate with me at all. But I really felt it was like sort of that bro hustle culture.
Yeah.
And I really felt like committed to listening to this book because he was the expert. And at one point, in all of the, you got to do this and this and this, he said, it's your business, so just do whatever the hell you want. And I was like, oh. It's like, well, I'm turning this shit off. But it was a weight that lifted, and it was a real shift of like, oh, I don't answer to a board of directors. I don't have a boss. I don't have to go talk to government officials. I can just do whatever the hell I want. It was amazing.
I'm like, amazing and terrifying.
100%. It is equally terrifying.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably like really the biggest hurdle I overcame was that initial, like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And, some hardcore imposter syndrome.
Ooh, imposter syndrome.
We know a little bit about that.
Listen to like our season 1 episode on imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and it creeps up. It does. It really does.
Did you find that there was like a imposter syndrome kind of growth even to become a published author as well? Like, was that a whole thing you had to work through?
Yeah. So there was, yes. Yeah, it was an interesting process. And, part of what I said last night is it was really enjoyable, except when it was agonizing.
Yeah.
And I really, really did enjoy much of it. And there was a lot of, a bit of like, who am I to do this? And some of that, what will people think? What if it's not good enough? What if it's not long enough?
It's the perfect size.
It's the perfect size. So yeah, there was definitely, and I think that's the thing, I work with women who are, entrepreneurs really, who are just starting out all the way to, 7 figures and more. And what I see along that path is that everyone struggles with issues around confidence. It is just that they change and evolve over time. And like I say, sometimes they get sneakier. And I think, so I actually, wrote this in the back of the book. There's a bonus exercise, and it's called, How to Have the Booming Confidence of Oprah. And it's really sort of the step-by-step guide to how to overcome that, those times where we are struggling with our confidence. And really, action is one of those. You talked about that a few minutes ago. Like just doing it is one of the keys to getting over it. So that was the piece about the book, is like in those times where, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this, or who am I to do this? And I just, I'm just going to keep writing because I'm bold, and why not?
Yeah, and you have something to say, so why not share it? And we all have different perspectives to add to the world as well. So why not you, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
absolutely. A lot of the beautiful messages that I was reading of people sharing about your book and how proud they are of you and whatnot, a huge theme that I saw was that Sara is all about community. And I know you built yourself a little community around writing this book too, right? So that must have played a really big factor in those days where you just wanted to pretend it wasn't happening and I did not commit to doing this. And
I think that's one of the things that my friend Shannon, who's known me like since we were in high school, every now and again I'll be talking about something and she'll just laugh and she'll just say, Sara, you have the most amazing ability to get people to do shit for you. Like,
that's a great skill.
Right? I'm like, I pay them to do it, Shannon. But I really am very good at being clear about what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I think I know what I'm not good at. And I also know what I don't like to do. And so in that book building process, and I know that I need accountability. I know that I need, sort of support along the way. And so, I really started with, I was, the universe and the Facebook algorithm presented me with a write a book in 30 days course.
Amazing. That's amazing. Like, okay.
All right then. And so I forced myself to wait until after Christmas last year. So I started writing kind of in my journal last year, maybe in October, some of the kind of key messages that were in there. Right. But I had a bunch of stuff going on. I don't remember what it was now. But I was like, I can't start this until all this other stuff is done. And so that was sort of my gift to myself between Christmas and New Year, was to start this write a book in 30 days course. And so I did that on, index cards. And I don't like to type. And I like to talk. So I recorded it all into my phone in like the voice app and got my VA to rev that up and give it back to me without the ums and ahs, because that just drives me crazy. And so then I just, and found a structural editor, found other people to help me along the way. And it was super helpful. And then once you get into the whole design part, that's a whole other world, right? Is the actual design of the book, which I know nothing about.
I like that you made it how you needed to make it to work for you. Like recording it into your phone. You don't think about it. You think you have to have your laptop open, typing the whole entire book away. I love that you made it work for you to really succeed in doing it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gotten it done if I had to sit at my computer and type it. That's not to say down the road, like in July, the first week of July, I blocked the whole week off. My kids were both gone to camp, and I was like, Christine Gordon Manley had given me all kinds of edits. And so I sat at my computer and did that. But that first draft, I really just needed to say it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's neat that you wouldn't even think that you could hire people to do those things, right? But you just have to think about it. Okay, this is what I really love to do. This is how I want to do it. This day and age, I think you can hire someone to do pretty much anything for you, I guess, right?
You really
and
can.
You just have to be, I think that's the hard part for women, especially getting started in business is, well, if I'm not bringing in very much money yet, how do I start paying people to do things? And, like same thing, like, you had revenue from your other streams of business, but this book this baby. There was no revenue coming in for that as you were writing it, right? But yet you would have invested lots of money into getting it to this point.
Yeah. And so I think that's a challenge for women in those early stages. And that is one of those things, we think about, that sort of 0 to 50, 60, 70, sort of one chunk. And then when you get to that, 70, trying to hit that 100, you're so busy. And yet it really isn't a lot of money. And you really do feel like I need to keep all of that for myself. And which is totally fair. We have to pay our mortgage. Yeah. And I think what we sometimes lose sight of is we live in a world now where we can buy a slice of anyone's time. So my first outsource was a VA. It's such a delight. Her name is also Sarah. And she's in Toronto. She's not with me anymore, but she was just so lovely. I met her on basically a business networking app. And she was just starting out, and she was charging $25 an hour as a VA. And so in those early time, she typed notes for me. I used to do a lot of, and I still do some, like strategic planning and community stuff. And so you would be out and about, and I would come back with like these pages and pages of flip charts. And I don't like to type. So I would take pictures of those, and she would type those. So it was that shift in mindset from, yes, I'm paying her $25 an hour to do this, but what can I do in that hour? And I assure you, it's make more than $25.
Yes.
So that was that was the shift I was able to make. But in that, when I was at that stage of maybe making, $60,000 or $70,000 a year, I didn't have all of the support that I have now. I had a reasonable amount that I could afford. I also had a mom, who did stuff, when I needed to. I also can't mail things. So anything that needed to be mailed.
It's those details,
right? They're very hard.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's key. It's, it's the zone of genius, right? Like, and the more you can spend your time in it, and your time is very valuable, why would you type and do those things? Yeah.
And I think, as people are listening, I think that can be perceived as, an awful lot of privilege in that, or, like that little bit of that, who do you think you are? Well, the reality is find the thing that you like to do. And if you like to type things, know that there are people like me who want things typed. Like, that's the thing in this world right now, regardless of what it is that you do, or even how much time you have. If you only have a little bit of time because maybe you are, a stay-at-home mom right now, or your kids, or, or whatever the reason is, you're a student, you can. That's the joy of entrepreneurship that I just didn't know forever, is that you can leverage your skills and your time to make money. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
And you should.
Yeah.
If that's what you want to do.
Yes.
Oh, goodness. So you started with a VA, and then you've built a team beyond that too, right? So what did that look like, or how did you kind of know when it was time to pull in those different people and make it more than just I need an hour of your time here and there? Because I'm assuming these are you have some full-time people working for you?
Mostly contractors. Yeah. Okay. So in yes and no would be the answer. So I knew that when my VA was really great, but I still needed to be the boss of everything. I was still the one, she was very much task focused, which is totally fair. But when I was like, I need more space in my head. And I think the thing for entrepreneurs is when you get to that place of you're super excited that you have a new client and you're also equally exhausted by the thought of it, that's, that time when you need to hire someone. So I hired an online business manager. So part of it is trying to figure out what is the thing that I need. And so for me, I knew I did some research and figured, okay, what I actually need is an OBM, an online business manager, and really someone to take care of the day-to-day operations. And the kind of business that I have has, it should, and we're developing a marketing engine. And there's, back end stuff to that and all of those, funnels and blah, blah, blah. A lot of details.
Yeah.
And so I knew that it's just so not my skill set. And I also know that in order to be successful, I need that. So I was able to, I hired Crystal to do that piece. And then she actually takes care of all of the rest of the team hires. So I have like a blog writer and which I read stuff and she writes blogs. It's great. And a VA and I had an amazing executive assistant and she left not that long ago because she got a full-time job like in the real world.
What?
Yeah, like not virtually. And I really cool. Whoever hired her, kudos to them. She was amazing. So we're hiring that position, social media manager, all of those. But that's the great thing is, what you need, you can hire for, and then the whole team around the book. And the other, I had Josie Baker. I don't know if you guys know Josie. So she's the executive director for Peers Alliance now. And, sometimes I hired Josie because I knew she was available. It came to my attention that she was available. And I had a lot of work in the not-for-profit space at that point. And I really needed some help. But that's not the kind of thing that you can easily outsource. That's not the kind of thing that you can hire someone to do easily. So sometimes you hire because you have a need and sometimes you hire because you see an opportunity.
Right.
And I saw that opportunity with Josie, that it would it was such a benefit to me and my clients to bring her on. And so she actually worked with me for almost a year. And one of my clients is Peers Alliance. And so I was doing quite an intensive contract with them. And Josie was doing a lot of that work. And then it came to pass that their ED left and Josie was offered that role and took it. So
that's cool.
It was really great. And it made me feel really good that, it was going to provide really good continuity for them. And it's just such an important organization.
I love that. Very cool.
So we would love to know the inspiration behind the book She Rules. I feel like we could put this over here.
Right?
Front and center.
Front and center. There we go.
I love it.
Yay! There we go.
Perfect. Yeah.
The inspiration. I think there is a number. So I always wanted to write a book. I just knew I would always write a book. I didn't ever imagine it would be a book about business. But I knew I always wanted to write something. And so in October 2020, we were really at that place in the pandemic where, generally speaking, by the time September hit, everybody I talked to was really struggling. And I had read this thing about surge capacity and how, when we go through a natural disaster, when we have a snowstorm, or it's a finite amount of time. And so we kind of get these internal stores and we rely on our adrenaline and we get through.
Yeah.
But because this was so long with no end in sight, our surge capacity was really collectively being depleted. And it was actually just really hard to watch. that, you know, everywhere I looked, people were struggling. And my dear friend Susan, we talk every morning. We walk and talk every morning. And so we were talking about this, and I couldn't quite wrap my head around it, because it's like the Prince Edward Island experience of the pandemic is definitely different than other places.
So unique.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it doesn't take away from the fact that it was difficult. And so I was just like, you know, I have had the same sort of difficult experience. We all have, you know, in tandem with the pandemic, all the just normal hard things that happen in life. And I felt like it's not that it was hard, but it was that I was bouncing back easier than perhaps other people around me. And I really recognized that was because of all of the self-care practices. Shocking. They really do help. They really do help.
Yeah.
All of those self-care practices that I had implemented when I started my business.
Right.
And so I realized at that point that perhaps there would be value in sharing that with other people. And that's really what the inspiration of the book was.
I love that.
That's amazing.
Of course, we're like self-care. That's really cool. Did you know it was going to be segmented? Like, I know you talked a little bit about you don't like rules, or you always believed that you didn't like rules. Stupid ones, right?
I don't like rules that I think are stupid.
Yeah, that's fair. Who does?
Right.
I love it.
I also think some rules don't apply to me.
Yeah, of course. It's like, or they're made to be broken.
Yes, that as well.
There's a few of those. Yeah. So how did you come about having it rules? Was it, I believe there was someone on your book team that actually named it for you.
Yeah. So I was working with Jamie Lee Mann, who is an amazing copywriter. And we are super lucky. We live only about 15 minutes apart.
Cool.
And, you know, in like true PI fashion, our kids are dating. So hilarious. That's
so
really
cute.
how we connected, was through this personal. And I mean, I knew she was a copywriter and I knew she was a writer. And so these sort of casual conversations turned into an engagement. And so I was calling them principles. I knew that I had these principles and I knew that these principles were, you know, to be taken and adapted for your own life. And so when she said their rules, and I mean, she, I don't know, somehow communicated with me one day, she rules. And I was like, man, that's a good name.
Yeah.
I don't know about rules, but that is a great name.
Yeah.
So it took me some time to work through that. I don't like rules is actually one of the stories, you know, all the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, I certainly had my rebellious teen years, and, you know, much of my early career was with a significant activist focus. So you have that story that you tell about yourself, that, you know, you're sort of this rebel, but actually I really like rules. I really like
right
structure, just the right ones.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you know what the rules are, written or unwritten, then you can figure out how to subvert them and how you can, you know, break them if need be. And so that it was but it was really Jamie Lee who pushed me to examine that as a story that I told myself and not actually the truth.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny when the coaches get coached?
Always interesting. Yeah.
Now I see it. Now I can't unsee it.
I do sometimes like to stomp around a bit.
Right? Yeah, that's cool. It says a lot for your character too, right? That you were like, these are principles, and it was like so ingrained in your head, these are principles, but to be able to adopt someone else's idea, really reflect on it to the point that that is what you went with, like that says a lot too, right? That it's not like, well, no, like I'm Sara Roach-Lewis. This is
Right.
my book and it needs to be my way.
Yeah.
I don't see that in any aspect of what you do. It's very collaborative.
Yeah.
I know you're very again, the community focus, right? It's, we can't do things alone. And that's a big message from this book too.
Well, and in my experience, like any idea you have just gets better when you share it with someone else and they bubble and squeak on it and then you bounce it around and it comes back. It always is better. And, when you've got a couple of decades of experience with that, it is relaxing into that. Again, I like process too. So it's like even though this is a process I don't know, I can relax into that and know that, I don't know anything about writing a book, but I do know a lot about collaboration. And I do know that good ideas come when you talk and explore.
Yeah.
That's very true.
I love that.
So what is the key takeaway that you would want the reader to get when they read She Rules? So many.
I know. I think the key takeaway is you do you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You do you. And that is where you will find your happy life. That is where you will find your business success. And the reality is life is not always easy. And so if we're doing the things in our business that actually bring us joy, and like if that is the rule and not the exception, there are always things that you have to do that you don't like. I mean, as soon as I say that, there's always that yes but. Yeah, okay, yes but you have to do your taxes and you don't want to do that. Yes. But on the regular, on an ordinary Tuesday, are you doing something that you really enjoy? Good. And that's where, I think that's where we find our peace and our happiness. And that's the kind of world I want to live in, is one where people are doing what makes them happy.
Exactly. Me too. Like, that sounds lovely.
That sounds great.
That's really cool. I think that's a really inspiring message. And you give such great guidance in all of the rules of just how to examine your life in a different way, right? You're really inviting people to take a new lens on things.
Thanks.
Yeah, I like it. So many things. No, it was I like the way that you wrote it. Like, it was very bite-sized chunks, right? Because I definitely would read a rule, kind of let it soak in, read another one. The stories that go along with it too. I just find that those help solidify what's going on there, I guess. So
thanks.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we get to say we know of published authors. So that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat.
That's awesome.
It's very fun.
So in all of this too, so in running your business, writing your book, raising a family, you also have an illness that can pop up for you from time to time to really set you back.
Yeah.
How was it to be diagnosed with that? And what are some of the things that you've had to implement to manage that and have it not be the thing that's the forefront all the time?
Well, and unfortunately it can be, right? So I have Meniere's disease. It's an imbalance of the fluid in the inner ear, and it causes dizzy spells, tinnitus, like ringing in the ear, and hearing loss. So I have a fairly significant hearing loss in my left ear. I actually have had Meniere's disease since I was about 15.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I had and so it's episodic. It comes and it goes. Much of my teen and early 20s were periods of being pretty miserable and not really knowing what was going on and not really having a diagnosis, and eventually getting a diagnosis that was this is probably what it is.
That's hard.
Yeah. And there's no known cause, there's no known cure, and there's really not great treatment. So luckily, when I got pregnant, I was quite sick before I got pregnant. And when I got pregnant with my first, all of my symptoms went away. Right? And it was very uncommon and unusual. And I had 10 years where I had not really had no symptoms.
Amazing.
It was so blissful, given how debilitating it can be, I'm so grateful that I didn't have that when my kids were really little.
Yeah.
So it was really hard when it came back because I was just like, what is
This
going on
is
here?
behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was really rough. And I felt a lot of shame around having a chronic, like having this illness. Even when I say those words now, it's so ridiculous. It is completely ridiculous. And I really feel for people who struggle with mental health issues, because I know how much shame and stigma I put on myself for a physical health issue, and we have so much more stigma with mental health issues. And so I had all these weird stories about how people wouldn't respect me and we wouldn't get funding at Women's Network if people knew that I had Meniere's disease. And so I really hid it. And I didn't take care of myself. And I pushed against. And it just got worse and worse. And it would go away and then come back. And sometimes for months and months at a time, I would be dizzy and sick, 3, 4, 5 days a week. And then, but when I'm not episodic, when I'm not dizzy, I forget I have it. Like there's such a shift. It's not like other illnesses where you sort of feel it all the time. For me, it's like
it's there or not.
It's there or it's not. And I mean, I have a whole vernacular that my family understands around, the degree of dizzy I feel in that day.
Right.
But yeah, it was really miserable.
Oh, yeah. I mean, good on you for learning how to take care of yourself through it too. Like I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I when I think about the context in which I became an entrepreneur, I really for someone who teaches people how to plan, and how important planning is in your business, I had no plan.
Right.
I didn't really know what I was going to do. I just told my employer that I was going to leave. And, we had an ease off period. So it was about 2 or 3 months where we moved from that I worked 20 hours a week.
Okay.
And I was really, really sick that summer. And I was driving home from Charlottetown one day in August, and I had a drop spell, which is the worst kind. And it's basically like the world flips upside down, like you're on a roller coaster, except I was driving.
Yikes.
And
scary.
so, it was terrifying. So I, put the brakes on. I was like, I know I just have to get off to the side of the road. And so I pulled over to the side of the road, and I could see that there was something ahead of me, but I didn't know what it was. So I just kept pulling off and basically slowly drove into the ditch. And what was in front of me was one of those temporary road signs. So that's why it was so confusing to me, because I know that it's a country road.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I drove into the ditch, and all these lovely people stopped to see if I was okay, and if I was drunk,
Right.
Which is fair. I was not. And so, my husband came and got me. I was not objectively not hurt. The car was not hurt.
Yeah.
But it was, the universe whispers and then it roars. That was the roar of you really got to get your shit together.
Yeah.
There's no safety net anymore. And really, it was the difference between pushing against and surrendering. Because I just thought, okay, Sarah, you have a chronic illness. For the last year, you have been sick 3 or 4 days a week. So you've got 3 or 4 days a week where you're going to be well. So you damn well better make the best of that. And I did a 90-day plan.
Yes, of course.
And I, and I couldn't even really figure out I couldn't be more specific about the goal than in 90 days, I want to feel better. And I started walking. I started a mindfulness practice, and I started eating better. And I literally, healthcare people will say, like, go for a 5-minute walk, and like that'll trick you into going longer. Well, I went for a 5-minute walk because that's really all I could do. And I would, wobble around the backyard.
Yes.
And then I would come back in, and slowly I started, in that 90 days, I felt a lot better. And, I didn't, it would be nice if like that was like, dun da da da, perfect. It's all great now.
Yeah.
It's a lot better now, and my health is much better. I lost 80 pounds, and I walk every day. That first year, I walked every single day, and you guys know what the weather is like here. It did not matter in Cable Head on the north side what the weather was like. I walked, and I know that makes a big. It makes such a difference for me to get outside.
Yes.
And I've done other things since then. I do a lot. And it's actually been this is the longest period of wellness that I've had since this round. So it's like probably 7 or 8 years. And I've been, for the most part, dizzy free for more than a year, which is super exciting.
Yeah. Good for you. It's a very brave endeavor. Just, trying to navigate it all, figure it out for yourself, and, take that leap into self-employment in it too, right? So you don't have that safety net, like you said. So,
well, and I mean, at that point, I could have probably gotten a job at government. I could have gotten a job somewhere else. But that comes with its own challenges.
It does.
Because in this world, I work at home. And I can create the world where if I'm going through periods where I'm really not well, which I certainly have in the last few years, long periods, I will book my time so that I have a call and my bedroom's right over there. And I'm done at that call and I go and I have rest before my next one. And that is the joy of entrepreneurship, is that you can do those kinds of things. And I really leverage that.
Set your own boundaries of how you work. That's so true.
Yeah, it's important. It's easy when you first get started to want to say yes to everything and bend over backwards for other people's schedules. Absolutely. And I've had to put up a few boundaries just recently for myself, because I was realizing I was starting to resent certain things. And it wasn't that I didn't want to do the work. I just didn't want to do it then. It just didn't work for me. Right. So then it's like, okay, let's take a look at this again. And it's not easy to do, but
it's really not
very important to do.
It's a rite of passage the first time you say no to a contract.
Did I really just do that?
Like, okay.
Like, I'm proud of myself, but yeah, love it. So a big theme for you is self-care. And you mentioned, that was a big inspiration for the book because you wanted other people to learn how to do that. And it's been so important for your own health journey. So besides walking, which is a very important part for you, what are some other things that you do?
I do all the things.
I love it.
Yay! So my morning routine is probably the most important piece of my self-care. And there's a schwackload of privilege in that because my kids are 14 and 17. And so,
more
morning,
self-sufficient.
Right? Morning does not work the same way.
I'm staying in bed, Mom.
Right. Yeah, they don't actually see mornings anymore unless I make them. But my morning routine is really important. I get up usually at 5:30. I have 2 of the most delightful cups of coffee in the world every morning. I have my 2 cups every morning and I really can't function without them. But I have like a really lovely space in my house. My friend Susan has introduced me to the joy of remote control candles.
Ooh.
The best thing ever. So battery operated candles, and you can put them on a timer. So you come out in the morning and the candles are already lit.
I like that.
It's so fun.
I feel like
I was gonna say I need to get
you just gave me a great Christmas idea for her.
They're super fun.
I was gonna say, that
Cool.
sounds amazing.
Yeah. So I write in my journal. I really walk through like what my day is going to look like. Sometimes I, pull a goddess card or a whatever and figure out, what the universe has to say for me today.
Mm-hmm.
And then my kids get up and they need to be driven to the bus. We're out of zone. And so part of the pandemic awareness was I actually really can't handle that frenetic jolt of energy first thing in the morning. And so when my husband is during the winter, Scott drives them to school because they need to be, it's later now. They leave the house at 7. But before that it was 6:45. And so Scott drives them on the off season, and then my lovely father-in-law takes them to school during when Scott's fishing.
Perfect.
That is the key. If I could only do one thing, it's that. Well, and take medication.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's important. I really listen to my body, and I feel like, it's funny. I actually think the consequences to all of us not practicing self-care are profound. It's that it takes longer to see the impact of that. For me, I know that if I don't take care of myself, all I'm doing is shooting myself in the foot.
Yeah.
And I'm shooting my family in the foot. I can't work. I'm really miserable, and no one really likes that. And I think that is the way, I just think it's so important that we take care of ourselves and that we practice that. I also, really take care of, I see my ear, nose, and throat specialist 4 times a year. I wear a hearing aid. I get my hearing tested regularly. And, I do other stuff like acupuncture. And I had this crazy experience a couple of years ago where I had a dizzy spell on a kayak.
Oh.
It was super no fun.
No, that's terrifying.
It was awful. But you know what the funny thing was? We were on Surrey River, me and my friend Shannon, and we were having a glorious time. Like, it was so heavenly. And then all of a sudden I had this crazy dizzy spell. And one of the things that I realized weirdly is that if I exercise, sometimes that will make it go away. So it's really hard to force yourself to do that. But so I was like, okay, I'm just giving her. Yeah. So I'm like on the kayak and giving her. I was like, nope, I still still can't open my eyes. So that was not, and I was, this is a dear friend. She has been through all of this with me forever. And so I was actually super chill in that moment. It's like, Shannon will get me out of this goddamn kayak.
Yeah.
She will drive me home. She will put me to bed. Yeah. And we will figure out cars and all that stuff tomorrow. So that was actually, and I just kept, on the drive home, I just kept thinking, I couldn't open it was really bad. I couldn't open my eyes. And I just kept thinking, nothing serious is happening here. Nothing serious is happening here. Because nothing serious was happening. But the next day, I had this crazy dizzy spell hangover where I couldn't get out of my own head. And I was stuck on this loop of what if this is my life? What if this just keeps happening? And I had myself so ramped up. Yeah. And so then I was just like, well, I need to sort that shit out because that's no fun. Yeah. And so I went to see a woman. I went to do tapping and, just to tap that out. It's like I've had a traumatic experience and I need to tap that in my body. So we did some of that, and then we talked to the universe and quantum physics and just decided that I was no longer going to be sick. And, it's like, I don't really know, but I'm really quite willing to try anything.
I love that so much.
I think that's super important for our listeners to hear too, is even if you're kind of worried about it or like, oh, is it too woo-woo? Give it a try and see how you feel. Where you might discover something that will completely, make you so much happier in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was in university, my aunt would do TT, therapeutic touch.
Okay.
So it's one where basically you have an energy field around your body, and you sort of, I don't know, you ruffle it and flatten it down and make it
Okay.
all smooth.
Is it kind of like Reiki?
Well, I don't know. I've not really
no.
ever done Reiki, but I think Reiki, they touch you, right? No? Sometimes.
When we went
only done it
together that
twice.
one time, she was kind of like more
Yeah.
like...
Yeah.
So that's what my aunt would do. And they lived in Summerside at the time. And I would come home from Mount A, stop at her house, and she would do that TT with me. And she would say, like, Sarah, she was way over here on either side of me, and she would have to work and work and work to sort of settle down the energy around me.
Wow.
I mean, someone, does my ENT think that is a reasonable response to what's happening? Probably not.
Yeah.
But did it work for me in that time? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Was it psychosomatic? I don't know. I don't care. It worked.
Yeah.
I think there's so much like unknown things about the universe, the world, what we're experiencing day to day, that you can't just write something off. And even if it is a placebo, like, it still feels good. And even like the Reiki, like, I didn't feel anything when we went, but like at the same time, it still was really good to kind of center yourself, and it was a different aspect of it too. So give it a try. Give anything a try.
Anything.
Yeah,
and it might be that you just need to do it the one time. Like, it's not you committing to a lifetime of whatever it might be. But yeah. That's cool. So when we talk about self-care and all the things that's out there, not only can it be overwhelming for women to say, like, what is it that I'm going to finally, spend the time on, the money on, whatever, they might not even believe that they deserve to. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to them if they were sitting here with us right now, of like why it's so important? Yeah.
Oh, how much time do we have? So I think a couple of things. It is understandable that women don't think that they deserve it, because we are socialized from the time that we are onesies, pink and blue, that, women put everyone's needs above their own. We are nurturers, we are kind, we are gentle, we are caring, we are mothers, we are all of those things. And all of those are words to say you put other people's needs ahead of your own.
Yeah.
And so it is not a surprise that women don't feel as though their needs are important, because that is a message that they have been receiving from the time that they were very little kids. And so what I would say is I would probably circle around until I found the message that resonated with them. And one of the things I would say is that it's actually really badass to practice self-care, because you are pissing off the patriarchy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right? I mean, our world is built on the unpaid labor of women. And even in houses where it does not matter if there are kids or there are not kids, on average, in this day and age, women do 5 hours a day more work than men do. And so by us not practicing self-care, that just allows the status quo to happen. But you know what? Like, it's actually really kind of a fun thing to break down oppressive structures while having a bath, going for a walk, playing Laserdisc, like whatever it is. And I think that's the thing, is that we have this view that self-care is privileged. It is, that it's like floofy. And it's not. It's really, really critical to, when we give ourselves time to just stop, that's when we can recharge. We can, we can find ourselves again. And that is really, really important. And there's all kinds of, I think it's important because that's where the great ideas come from, and that's where the inspiration happens. But at the end of the day, self-care is important because you as a human, your being is important, and you having the best life that you have is important. And that looks really different. I mean, I'm, 49. I have teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
I had dinner with some friends last night, and one of them has a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And she's like, I don't know how early I have to get up
Yeah.
to have half an hour to
Right?
myself,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah.
it looks really different. And
Yeah.
I think there was a time like when I was working at Women's Network, you know, I'm driving all the time. I have this job where, you know, there's huge need. There's never enough money. There's never enough resources.
Mhm.
Like you feel like if you stop, you're failing people.
Mm.
And really, so I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't stop.
Yeah.
And I just got sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker.
Mhm.
And when I stopped, then that's when you're like, well, I can support a whole lot more people
Mhm.
and see the change that I want to have in the world, make money, have a
Mhm.
happy family.
Yeah.
If I just take care of myself.
Just practice self-care.
We always say that analogy. If you go on a plane, you have to put the
Yeah.
oxygen mask on first before
Yeah.
you help anybody else. So why
Yeah.
we think that we can, you know,
Like
help everyone on the
circumvent
plane without putting our mask on
Yeah.
is beyond me.
that. It's
So
true.
yeah, let's piss off the patriarchy. If that's one takeaway you can have on this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. Well, and
Buy a
yeah,
book.
I love
Yeah.
it. I was thinking too, like your book is, you know, in a nutshell, you do you, like be
Mhm.
yourself. But how can you really know who you are or be yourself if you're not slowing down enough to figure
Yeah.
out what that really is too, right? So it all really goes hand in hand.
Yeah. And I think that's it. Like and that's why I wrote the book that way, with like some of the little sort of messages or takeaways are really only a couple of paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just find that one thing, because it sometimes shifts and changes what you need, and it has to start with those baby steps. Like I think about my own particular journey on that. You know, there are times when I will go for a 2-hour walk. But 4 years ago, I could not walk for more than 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I also couldn't have imagined that in 4 years I would go for a 2-hour walk.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's impressive how far you can come.
Mm.
Oh, I feel like we could stay here all night,
Mhm.
but we better
too.
not. Maybe we'll have you back for a part 2.
I would be happy to come
that
to
would
the
be great.
closet
Yes.
anytime.
Awesome. So before we say goodbye, we want you to tell us, where can all of our listeners get your book, and where can they find you online or
Sure.
whatnot? Yeah.
So you can find my book on Amazon, and locally it is at Indigo and the Bookmark.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me at sherules.biz,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm learning Instagram. I'm currently terrible.
You're
but
not.
It's very fun and
Yeah.
confusing.
Yes.
Yeah. And my kids, who you think, they just look at me and go, God, you're old, Mom. Thank you for your support.
Yeah. They're so lovely.
You're not on
That's
TikTok
funny.
yet?
I
3
don't think-
platforms is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's awesome. So have fun with it. And yeah, I'm sure you'd love to hear from any of these listeners too. So
I really would. You know, one of the things
yeah.
about writing a book is hearing back. Like, I'm curious to know what resonated or
Mhm.
what didn't.
mm,
I'm like,
Yeah.
equally, I am super curious. So, you
Mhm.
know, if you've read it and you want to talk to me, send me a note.
you're all yours.
Mm.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. This was so much fun. And with that, we'll say
Next
goodbye.
weekend.
Bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Thriving Tides. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
Follow us, Thriving Tides, on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube to stay connected. And remember, don't fight the rip currents.